Hi, I am Pavel and welcome to the North of Rapture podcast. This series is all about communication with clients from a designer's perspective. Working on a daily basis with a client is kind of like marriage. But it's not a marriage with the person you love, a culmination of 5 years of dating, something you both really wanted. No, projects are like a drunken marriage in Vegas with someone you met 3 days earlier. There's a lot of passion, but there's no way this is not ending with a divorce. So make the most of it. Now listen up. This one will be all about working with clients on a daily basis, and this is a very broad topic, so I will actually split this into 2 episodes. This one will deal with getting the job done. The next one will deal with issues and conflict. This is also going to be the most personal episode I do in the series, because I really want you to understand how much my approach changed since I started in this industry. So let's start with a bit of backstory.
A long time ago.
Sorry, wrong clip. Here we go. While I did some minor commercial projects before that, I really started getting regular work around 2006. It's important to note that I don't have any formal education in design. I'm self-educated. This means that while my skills were fairly decent, my theoretical knowledge was seriously lacking. So, as any young, self-respecting freelancer with his 2 feet firmly on the ground, I was positive that I know absolutely every goddamn thing about design. I was also always right. And I didn't need to prove anything because my expertness was so brilliant. People had to squint when talking to me, otherwise they would go blind. It was much later that I realized they weren't squinting because of my brilliance, they were frowning because they were confused by my bullshit. Anyway, because I started as a freelancer without anyone to guide me, I was under the impression that clients came to me for help because they were clueless and therefore I would not have them question me. It was my way or the highway. The fact that I could not only design but also build a website for you, a flash one at that, didn't really help my overinflated ego. I'm sure you know where this is going. I wasn't great to work with, and that meant no referrals, no testimonials, and in turn no regular work. The only reason my career didn't end then and there was because I was hired by one of the biggest agencies in Poland at the time, mainly thanks to my fairly substantial set of skills. After that, I worked for agencies where I didn't really have direct contact with the clients at all, so I didn't have a chance to observe how to work with them. But by dealing with more business-oriented people, project and account managers, I did learn a great deal, because they showed me that it was the client's needs that were paramount, not the design itself. Now, what I'm about to tell you might seem a bit odd coming from a designer, but once I went back to freelancing and to interacting with clients directly, I came to the most important realization of my entire career. One that allows me to record this podcast with confidence. It was a realization that the design itself isn't what the clients actually need from me. You see, before I worked to prove myself, for recognition, for fame and glory, for drugs and I went too far. I worked not for my clients, but for myself. But thanks to one challenging project and one very persistent client, it finally clicked. I started working not for awards and mentions on social media. I started working to provide value. And sometimes that value doesn't need to be pretty as long as it's effective. Where am I going with this? To a conclusion, and that conclusion is very simple. Stop working for yourself and start working for your clients. Sounds like common sense? Well, go to any Facebook group for designers and you'll see that it's not that common after all. It's also not as simple to put into practice as you might think, because it might require a serious adjustment in your approach to work. It might also require putting a muzzle on your ego. Whoa, down boy. The first step for me would be to switch your perspective. You need to start looking at projects from the client's point of view and then augment that with your experience and skills. That is going to have a big impact on your priorities because you'll start considering the business side of things a lot more. You'll be looking for solutions to your client's challenges and needs, and then you'll fit the design to those solutions, instead of focusing on the design first and then trying to mold it to fit your client's brief. You'll no doubt see a significant change in the way conversations with your clients go as well. The balance between designing and planning will be shifting towards the latter. Another change you might see is that you'll want to have a lot more insight from your client than before, and as a consequence, you'll start including them in the conceptual phases. You know how you often thought that the client is the biggest enemy of the project? Now your client will be your biggest ally. The more you talk to them, the more you'll see their vision of the project. This isn't to say that you'll be there just to take your client's direction. On the contrary, the more you are in tune with them, the more insightful your questions and the better your suggested solutions. And the more solutions you provide, the more your client will trust you and will value your input. After all, you are the expert here, and your knowledge about user experience patterns and how a proper visual language can elevate your client's product far outweighs what they might know. At least in most cases, because at times you might work with another designer as your client, and holy shit, I don't think I even want to get into that. That's a topic for a whole separate episode, filled with profane language and screaming. Look, I have my weaknesses and having a designer as a client is my kryptonite. Anyway, one of the most important and useful consequences of including your client in the process is that you'll cut down on the design time, but best of all, the number of revisions you'll have to do. It's not always puppies and rainbows though. While I intend to talk about the less pleasant part of daily interaction with clients in the next episode, I need to mention something here. While in most cases I was able to build a very good rapport and understanding with my clients, it's never something that's guaranteed. However accommodating and open you are, there's no fighting with someone else's personality or convictions, at least not in a professional environment. While I'm generally not opposed to conflicts in projects, that conflict needs to be based on professional grounds and never, absolutely never on personal ones. In the teaser episode of the series, I told you that I'm not going to give you any strict rules, but if I would, this would be the only one. Do not jeopardize a project just because you don't like somebody. Regardless of how annoying, indecisive, or difficult they might be, I find it to be a designer's biggest failure to lower the quality of their work or give up just because their inability to maintain composure. Unless, of course, your client is abusive or is trying to ruin the project on purpose. Then you have my permission to flip them off and kick their ass to the curb. Being strong-willed is one thing, taking shit from your client is another. Because this was a very serious part, here's a funny clip. You're welcome. But that previous part does lead me to the next one. Remember the first episode where I gave you some tips? There was this one about not showing too much emotions. Let's get back to this one for a moment. It is my belief that a professional should be able to keep their emotions in check, and that includes crisis situations. We all get frustrated, angry, or even excited at times, but if we're too emotional, we might lose the client's trust. It's difficult to work with people that seem unhinged. Alas, this doesn't always work both ways, if you know what I mean. Wink wink, nudge nudge. But again, This is something I'll leave for the next episode. In the end, everything comes to two things in my opinion: patience and flexibility. They say patience is a virtue for a reason. I found that patience is the key component to finishing all the boring and annoying projects, getting through all those difficult clients, and persevering through all conflicts. And patience is a skill that can be developed. Now, here's the moment where I'll reveal how big of a nerd I am. And I wear it like a badge of honor. I didn't used to be very patient. I was, dare I say it, impatient. You know what changed that? Warhammer. For those who don't know what Warhammer is, allow me to explain. Warhammer is a tabletop strategy game where two or more opponents command armies of various units. A big part of the game is actually collecting and painting your armies. We're talking plastic and metal figures, some of them 3 centimeters in height or even smaller. And it takes hours or sometimes days to paint the really impressive models, your commanders and fantastical creatures. And let me tell you, nothing teaches you patience like watching paint dry. Seriously, it takes a lot of patience, time and will not only to paint the models, but to actually develop enough skill and technique so that they don't look as if done by Jackson Pollock. Jackson Pollock, by the way, fantastic artist, but would be shit if it came down to painting Warhammer figurines. Now, flexibility is another thing that can be achieved if only you are willing to compromise. Before I changed my evil ways, I cling to this untrue notion that clients just ask for changes because they think they know better what will work for them, or that they simply want to stay in control of the project. And while that is the case from time to time, the vast majority of people are more than willing to revise their stance when faced with compelling arguments. But they are only willing if you can make concessions of your own. You know that whole argument of what happens when an immovable object meets an unstoppable force? Well, according to physics, nothing happens. That's what. My approach is this. If a change proposed by the client doesn't have a detrimental effect on the design itself, either its visual composition or usability, then there is no good reason not to implement that change. If it will have a negative effect, well, it's your job to explain that effect to the client. And if they are still attached to the idea, that negative effect is on them, and they can't blame you for it. Make them aware that's the case. You might not like the change, but ultimately it's the client's call. Just do it and move on. Another advice I want to give you is about fitting your client's temperament. Be yourself, of course, but also be mindful of your client's demeanor. If you're working with someone who's very organized and to the point, you don't want to act all goofy. If your client is very open and shares anecdotes from their personal life, you can be more open as well. It's useful to observe your client, their reactions and behavior during the initial days of the project, so that you can make them feel at ease around you. However, don't go out of your own comfort zone. You have absolutely no obligation to adjust your behavior in a way that would make you uncomfortable. In the end, it's important to remember that thinking of your work as just delivering some designs is an oversimplification. As with any service, the point is to provide value. It's worth thinking about it in a holistic way. You increase the value not only by producing quality work, but also providing a comfortable environment for sharing ideas, conceptualizing the work, and achieving results that benefit everyone. So it kind of is like a marriage. For a successful business relationship, each side needs to display trust, patience, and ability to compromise, and a good deal of understanding. This is the end of part 1. And next time, we'll talk about the other side of the coin. The conflict, the mistakes, useless feedback, the abuse, violence and Oh, I went too far again. Went too far. You were listening to the North of Rapture podcast. This episode was made in association with NetGuru. If you have any comments, questions, or you just want to say hi, you can reach me at podcast@northofrapture.com. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram @northofrapture, all one word. Thanks for listening, until next time. And now if you'll excuse me, I need to return some videotapes.